Welcome to the Printer's Edge with LaManna, a podcast about how to sell, buy, or build a printing business. Now here are your hosts, LaManna and Ken Okel.
You're listening to the Printer's Edge podcast presented by Label and Narrow Web. Hi, I am Ken Okel. Glad to see you at our latest episode. Want to catch up? You can always go back to the previous episodes. Today, two topics on the agenda. The first one we are talking about, what do buyers really want? It's a topic that comes up a lot with people, always asking us about it. Number two, it's going to be your listener question. This one is, let's say it's a family affair. And how do you adjust your business plans accordingly? Of course, I want to introduce right now Mr. LaManna, who is known as your go-to consultant in the printing and graphics industry. Rock, how are you doing today?
Doing great, Ken. Thank you very much.
All right, so let's get to this first topic. You know, a few years back, there was a movie, What Do Women Want? There's been a lot of discussions in dating. What do men want? So we got to answer the question, what do buyers want in the world of printing?
Ken, I'll tell you, I just returned from the FC Association gathering in Orlando, and we had about 105 attendees. Most of them were second generation. And the discussion was basically on what do buyers want. And it's ironic that most sellers are focused on what they want. It's the buyers that really make things happen. The buyers are the ones that come to the closing with a check. Okay? That's how it's basically paid, is the buyer is looking at the business, saying to themselves, do they have these three criteria strategically to fit into my business? And that's how it really starts. And you never know what the seller or the buyer wants until you strategically talk to them about what's available, what is the potential, and then we really start talking about the quantitative and the qualitative type criteria.
And I think you were telling me earlier that often you can have a really good printing business, but the emphasis by ownership is on operations. And they're not thinking about some of the stuff that's really attractive to a potential buyer.
Most sellers are very proud of their technical background or their operations background. Not too many are really focused on the sales, the marketing, and what they call the projections or the pro forma of the future of the business. Because really, the CEO, owner, entrepreneur really needs to look in the future of the business. And that's one of the reasons why they're looking at selling. It's either their age, their retirement, their health, or some type of, let's call it a need to sell. What is the motivation of selling their business? Possibly even a succession. If there's a succession opportunity through management, acquisition, or family transition, you need to understand the future, because you're really talking to the CPAs, the tax accountants, the lawyers, the expertise in estate planners. I mean, there's so much more to it. And most sellers that I know underestimate the time of preparation and planning and making sure that they have the investment of all these resources to transfer their business to a third party, a family, or whatever that may be.
Because the buyer really wants to make sure that they're buying something that wasn't just powered by the force of the owner's personality and will, that the business is something that will succeed when a new owner takes over.
Oh, they're looking at sustainability. They're looking at the potential. They're looking at the capacity. They're looking at the existing management. They're looking at the sales mix of customers. They're looking at the market served. There's so much to be aligned with to make the perfect ideal buy-sell execution of a transaction. There's so much involved. People, they underestimate what it's going to take. They just assume that this business is so damn great, I have a ton of buyers. That's just not the way it is.
What would be your suggestion for that seller or that person who's entertaining a sale, almost like someone who's thinking about selling their house? What should they start to do ahead of time before they even entertain the idea of selling in order to maximize what they've got and hopefully get a good payday?
Ken, I call it the three commandments. Number one is honesty, integrity, transparency of the quantitative and the qualitative type information that we need to gather. And you have to get that in writing. And the best thing is to get professional people to gather this information, put it in writing so it's credible and accountable. It has to be the truth. These are facts that you're going to gather. Number two of the three commandments is basically a plan. Any plan. You need to decide if it's going to go to the family, if it's going to a management, if it's going to a third party. What are your plans specifically? What is your objective? There's many different objectives. And I highly recommend that you get this in writing. And number three of the three commandments is accountability. You need to be accountable for your plan to execute. And you need people to execute. You need professional people to execute the exit, the estate plan, the integration. And this takes the buyer and the seller to make sure that these are accomplished. And I always add what is the fourth? So you got 1 + 1 + 1 equal your legacy. And I always believe that legacy matters. It's how you want to be perceived. As a seller, what you've done for 30, 40, 50 years in your transition, and how you treat your people, how you treat your management, how you treat the future, how honorable you are, if you keep your integrity, if you keep to the plan, and so on and so on.
We were discussing earlier an analogy almost of a sports team, where let's say if there was a team that was successful, like the New England Patriots, or a team that has a great brand value like the Dallas Cowboys, if someone were to buy the team, they don't just want to see the keys to the office. They want to know that there are plans for the following season, that there's good staff who's in charge of things. If they buy a team where all the previous success factors are no longer there, then the value of the purchase really can't be justified.
I mean, we could talk about any major league sport. You look at football, for an example. There was a transition. Al Davis of the Oakland Raiders passed it on to his family. Okay? What did he have? What did the son do immediately? General manager. New coaching. Look at what their brand is doing. Look at the combine that's coming about. The drafts, the contracts, and so on. We talk about the transition of Peyton Manning, new quarterback. What's going to happen to that brand? How about the Indianapolis Colts when they made their change from we're going to let Peyton Manning go and we're going to bring in Andrew Luck? I mean, basically, these are all family businesses that are transitioning, and during that transition, don't underestimate that there's not a plan. There's a succession plan. And believe me, there's a value placed on the perception of the future. It's just like when George Steinbrenner bought the New York Yankees. They were down and out. He went from a steel worker and shipbuilder family business to owning the New York Yankees. And what's happening? Mr. Steinbrenner has passed. And now who's running the organization? 2 sons and a daughter. It's just interesting that everyone needs to have some type of a plan. And if the owner of the business has decided that it's time to pass on the business, there's going to be an estate plan. There's going to be some reason why you have to pass on either the business, sell the business, whatever that may be. It's time. It's very systematic. And there's professional people. There's no secrets in a transaction of a buyer and a seller. This is basically, here's the process, here's who you're dealing with, who do you trust, and where's the post-opportunity, the potential and the capacity, and where's this company going? And then the seller should always have a transitional plan for himself and his family, because it's basically the transition of how happy they're going to be once they sell that business and the image that they've worked on for 15, 40, 50 years.
So, Rock, as we end this segment, what would you say should be the biggest takeaway for that printing business owner?
The business owner looking to sell needs to think it through, discern exactly what they want to do, have a plan, and communicate it to either the family, the management, what the decision is. So if it's going to be expand the business, expand it. Plan for it. If you're going to exit, make that happen. Professional people are out there to help you. You're not alone in this situation. This is not the first time it's been done. It may be the first time you've done it, but it's very systematic, a transaction of this sort. So basically the takeaway is understand what's motivating you to make this decision. How much time do you have to really implement your goals? Communicate it to your loved ones, what your plan is, because it's always good to have support for your family to understand what your next steps are, and then basically execute. Go out and get the right people to do the right things. Take the time out to do the right thing. So once again, be honest with yourself. Have the plan, discipline, and be accountable for your decision.
Rock, in these situations, information is always powerful. And if you want to make yourself more powerful in the printing industry, then I really suggest you check out our sponsor, Label and Narrow Web. You could head over to their website right after the podcast, of course. But go to Label and Narrow Web, all spelled out, labelandnarrowweb.com. You can sign up for their electronic updates as well as their printed magazine. Both are packed with lots of fantastic resources from people, including Mr. Rock LaManna. Because, Rock, you have a column in there that you're very famous for. Tell me a little bit about that.
The bottom line, we focus on the audience are business owners looking at situations, either expanding their business, exiting their business, a sale of their business, or even looking at acquisition. So basically, we're always concentrating on what's happening, it's current information, and we try to educate and inform our readers what's happening in the marketplace.
So just one of the features of Label and Narrow Web, so check them out, labelandnarrowweb.com. Remember, information you have to act upon, it is priceless. Let's give some more priceless information to everybody, because we have our popular segment right now, our listener question. This is your opportunity to submit a question to Rock and I. We'll give you the answer. You may not like it, but we promise we will give you the answer. As always, we keep these questions anonymous because we understand privacy is important to you. So we make up a fictional person that the question is from. This one, let's see, baseball season just started recently. So this question comes from Mr. Babe Ruth. Babe Ruth has the following question for us. We're entering the final years of owning our printing business. We have a son and a daughter who are both involved in the business, though not equally. One does more than the other. Should we be looking to pass on the business to both of them, or are we creating a problem for them that could lead to hard feelings down the road and perhaps the loss of the business? What do you think, Rock?
That's very interesting because I'm one of 11 children, and we had the same issue.
Okay.
People participating, some not, and so on. So in this case, my recommendation to this husband and wife at this trade show, at this expo, that came right up to me and started asking these questions. By the way, the son happened to be also at the expo, but was not present at the discussion. And the first thing I asked was, well, what are their roles? What's the participation? What's their commitment to the business? And eventually what happened was, one of my recommendations was, number one, is ask them. Ask each son and daughter their interest in the future of the business, if they're interested in a succession plan. And you know what? It shocked me that they weren't communicating to the kids. And it was actually interesting that one was more or less in operations The father was the face of the company. By the way, this was a third generation discussion, okay? And the business was actually declining the last couple of years. They lost a major customer. So I asked, well, what is the sales of the operations? Who's handling the sales? We have no outside sales force, Rock. Whoa, very interesting. So how did the future look without salespeople, especially if the father at 67 was looking at retiring? That was their objective. The husband and wife wanted to transition the business to their kids, but weren't sure if the kids, number one, were skilled. Number two, the future of the business was in decline. So how were you going to invest in the business? And the other option was, you know what? I would really, number one, communicate to the children if they're interested in the business. And if they are, find out what their skill set is. And that would be the objective aspect, which is there's industrial psychologists out there that would really determine their strengths, their skill set, and would identify if they're interested in taking over the business, or even if they're qualified, interested, disciplined enough, and so on. And then the other option is basically is once that first step is, Dad, we're not interested in the business. Mom, we're not interested in business. That's another strategy. Sell a business to a third party and disperse if they're interested in remaining with the business or accepting some of the proceeds. It's up to them. The first thing I would do is communicate to the kids what their plan is, their timetable, and if they're interested in pursuing remaining with the business and their skill sets. So if there's any gift that you could give your kids, and I know this personally, is education. And education of your children. None of my children are involved in the printing industry. They all selected something different. And one of the best gifts I gave them was an industrial psychologist while they were in high school before they transitioned into college. So here's a situation where you can bring in someone objective to look at the skill set of all four members in this case and decide which way they want to go. That was my recommendation.
I think it makes a lot of sense because not knowing a successful outcome, and if someone invests many years in a family business that just isn't right for them, it's a loss of time. It hurts the family relationships. It's just a big problem. So makes sense. That is our question of the month. Now, if you would like to send us your own question, where should people send their questions into?
RockLaManna.com. My website, RockLaManna.com. You can subscribe to my blog. It'll all connect to the podcast, LNW, information and links and so on. So be free to, and I'd appreciate if you would subscribe, and we'll keep you informed on our monthly e-news, our blog, and other articles that are going out on a monthly basis.
So basically, rock@rocklamanna.com is the great way to contact you by email?
Yes.
Perfect. And of course, if you want to reach me, my website, kenokel.com, KENOKEL.com. I am a professional speaker who is an expert in productivity, who also dabbles in the printing industry with experts like Mr. Rock LaManna. So, Rock, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Ken.
And we will see you in the marketplace.
This is the Prince's Edge with Rock LaManna. Thanks for listening.